This is The Last Laugh. I'm Matt Wilstein from The Daily Beast. And after today's episode, I will have had every rotating host of The Daily Show on this podcast. She has 3 Emmy nominations this year for The Daily Show and for her short-form side series in which she Foxsplains the biggest conspiracies of the Trump era. Desi Lydic, welcome to The Last Laugh.
Thank you. Oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm bringing us home.
You're the last one. Well, I will say I still have not had Jon Stewart on, so but he's like a separate entity, I think.
Sure. He's a very busy man. He's also a very lazy man. He will only work 1 day a week.
Yeah, what's that about?
Right. I don't know. I mean, come on, step it up, Jon. It's the only negative thing I can say about him is that he'll only give us Mondays, but it allows us to pick up his shifts the rest of the week. So that's okay.
It allows you all to flourish. So that's wonderful. And you certainly have this year, you have 3 Emmy nominations, as I said, which is unbelievable.
Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I something must have gone terribly wrong. I demand a recount. That it can't be right.
I did notice that you and Jordan Klepper both have 3 nominations this year. Is there a little healthy competition happening there? Do you?
I'll take him down. I will gladly take that Michigan lanky boy down, please.
Yeah, you're in separate categories for the most part, so that helps.
Yeah.
So you don't have to compete against each other directly.
No, I will actually tell you, full disclosure, he was hosting the day that they announced the nominations, and I couldn't keep my mouth shut. So he was having a very small, intimate meeting about the guest who was on that night on the show. And I said, "Can I tell him? I'm going to tell him." And so I burst into the room and screamed that he was nominated. We were all very excited for him.
Yeah, well, he's been on this podcast 4 times, so you have a long way to go to catch up to him there.
He loves eating up the air. He just can't stop talking, that Klepper.
Well, The Daily Show is on hiatus as we're talking right now. You're on this sort of extended summer break. So how's that going for you? Are there stories that are happening that you're like, oh, I wish I was there to cover that and I want to be on the air? Are you feeling good or how's it going?
Matt, I am trying as hard as I possibly can to not pay attention to anything right now. So don't tell me about anything crazy that's happening, like, martial law experimentation in DC. I don't want to hear about any kind of crazy, wild, terrifying stories.
Maybe giving Alaska back to Russia. That might be happening soon by the time people hear this. I'm not sure.
Always. Like I try really hard not to engage too closely, but you can't help but to see a few things come through.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not in a bunker. I'd like to be sometime. I'm actually talking to you right now from my teenage bedroom that I grew up in Kentucky. I'm in Louisville, Kentucky, visiting right now. So that's my way.
Is that surreal to be in your teenage bedroom and back home?
Yeah, it's a little weird. I've got you propped up right now on my high school yearbooks, on 3 high school yearbooks. Don't make me get them out and show you humiliating photos.
Did you get any superlatives now that you opened the door to that line of questioning?
Oh God, you know what? So I got best dressed my senior year of high school.
Wow.
And when I look, I actually will not show. I will show you humiliating photos, but that one I cannot show. It is so embarrassing what I chose to wear in that photo. It was like head to toe leather. Wow. Remember, I don't know where did you grow up?
I grew up in Boston area. So
okay. Did you have a Wilson's leather?
Not that I know of. I'm not sure we got that up there.
For some reason, I was like, what really screams high fashion is just top to bottom leather. I was wearing this oversized leather black coat that was very hot with some high-waisted leather pants, leather boots, a belt.
Wow.
And then I had one of those, basically a bad version, like a mall version of the Rachel cut from Friends, if that gives you any idea. So
that sounds great.
I guess I was best dressed, but I didn't deserve it.
Yeah. Are you sure it wasn't ironic?
No, I wish I had that kind of sense of humor to do that. No, I committed. I actually tried really hard.
So you were the last host before this break on The Daily Show, I believe. I was watching that week. And the last episode that you did that week, you opened with what I thought was a really great segment on, of course, Sydney Sweeney for a change. You mentioned at the top of that the only thing that could knock Jeffrey Epstein off the news was Sydney Sweeney.
Go
And
figure.
I thought that was a great piece. It was very in your wheelhouse, I thought. But I'm curious, sort of, to use that as an example of how you work at the Daily Show. Um, what was your initial reaction to that controversy? Did you immediately know it was something that you wanted to talk about on the show, or how did that one come together?
No, my impulse was actually to drag my feet and not talk about it for as long as
Mm,
I possibly could, because I just felt like it was such a distraction, like such
hmm.
a silly, everyone was up in arms for a different reason, and it just felt it just felt overblown when there are other like really important things happening in the world. So I was sort of dragging my feet, but then it just became the conversation. And here's the great thing about what we get to do is we're not just covering Trump. We're not just covering the administration, but we get to satirize the media. So when the media is talking about something like Sydney Sweeney, we get to tackle that. And there really was so much material that we couldn't help but to roll up our sleeves and dig in on it. But there were people on the left that were offended and up in arms and thought it was very intentional. I did have some questions on whether it was intentional or not. It seemed to be, one of the ads felt like, ooh, they had to have known what they were stepping into here.
Yeah, I felt the same way.
Um,
It's not like it was so offensive and outrageous to me, but it did seem knowing in some way, or that they may have been
right.
courting that MAGA audience a little bit.
It was enough. There was enough of a nod where I thought like someone in that room had an idea of what they were
Hmm.
doing.
Hmm.
But then, the left was upset about it in some ways. It wasn't overwhelming, but enough people were hopping on their phones to talk about it on TikTok and what have you. And then the right just came out in full force. And those were the reactions that were the most
Yeah.
brazen and kind of upsetting and over the top and hilarious to us. You can always count on Megyn Kelly to give you the goods on some things. So that was I felt like a good opportunity to go in and sort of satirize that and lean in on the hypocrisy.
Yeah, that was what you really zeroed in on, was Megyn Kelly all of a sudden being the biggest Sydney Sweeney fan in the world after, I think, just a couple weeks earlier criticizing her, right?
How quickly they forget,
Yeah.
and that's the way that's Fox News is like that all the time. I mean, there's so many media outlets that are doing that right now. It's just like the hypocrisy is unbelievable. It's so overwhelming, and no one's even embarrassed by it anymore. Our job has always been to point that out and to lean into that. But they don't even care. They're like, yeah, so what? That was yesterday.
One thing that it occurred to me watching that is this lesson that I've always heard that Jon Stewart imparted to correspondents over the years and everyone, is that you should include your point of view in the stuff that you're doing, and that it should really be coming from you. Is that something that you think about, both when you were a correspondent and now hosting the show? Is how do I sort of take some of my own opinions and feelings and inject them into these pieces?
Yeah, always. It's a real privilege to be able to do that as a performer, as an actor. I came from the scripted world and improv and, comedy, but never stand-up comedy. So to be hired to do a job where you actually get to be part of the creative process behind the scenes, you get to be part of the writing process and put the pieces together and really shape with your own perspective and point of view. Like there aren't that many shows that allow you to do that. So yeah, for me the last 10 years have been like kind of like going to film school. So we definitely get to do that as a correspondent, but I would say that the role of the correspondent and the creative process is very different, because as a correspondent you're playing a character. You have the armor of this very arch character, so you can go hard, you can go 200% into satirizing a particular perspective that's very far from your own to highlight some point that you want to make. But you have that armor and that protection. When you're hosting, it's much more vulnerable and it's much more honest in a lot of ways, because you're yourself. When we're sitting at the desk, we're hosting as ourselves with the help of a team of incredibly talented writers who are there to make us look good, but it is our point of view and our perspective. So getting comfortable with that and getting comfortable with that vulnerability has been, it's a process, but the day moves so quickly and you have to make so many choices from your gut. You cannot, I can overthink things, and there is no time to overthink. I mean, you have to form a take as quickly as possible. So sometimes, I'll go into that hosting week and be watching everything over the weekend, and I'll make notes and I'll kind of think about what I want to say. But then the news cycle has turned over 11 times by the time Tuesday comes around, and we're now talking about a completely different story. So I think part of the gift of being there for as long as I've been there is you start to exercise that mechanism. You're sort of working that muscle for a long period of time. Like, how do you feel about this issue? And then that's where the writing team comes in to help kind of shape and streamline it.
Do you feel like when you first got there, was there a specific character that you were either hired to play or that you felt like you were being pushed into? I'm going to be this type of person on the show?
Yeah, it's so funny. My audition, I've auditioned for the show 3 times over the course of many years. And the last time that I auditioned, it was actually when Jon was still at the show, right before he announced that he was leaving. So I submitted this tape. It was a completely different time. It was pre-Trump. Like, Trump was in the conversation, but not in any meaningful way at all whatsoever. And when I auditioned, they give you 2 pieces to perform that have already been on the show, and then you write your own piece. You've probably talked about this with the other guys. And the piece that I wrote for myself was very much a Megyn Kelly type. It was like, I want to go in and do the female Colbert. Like, I loved watching what Stephen did over the years, and I thought, well, that might be fun to show, like, what is the female Fox News version of this on the Daily Show. So my audition was very much in that world. It was like Gretchen Carlson, Megyn Kelly, very arch. And by the time I got brought in, Jon had announced that he left, and then Trevor was hired, and then it was like months later. And I came in with another audition that was kind of like that, and they ended up hiring me on the show. But then when Trump came into the picture in a really meaningful way, it felt like that's not what the show needed at that time. If I would have done that, it would have been so limiting, and it would have really put me in that corner. And I'm grateful that they never said, like, oh, you need to play this character. We sort of very quickly let that go.
Yeah. Do you feel like you would have been more you needed to be more in opposition to Trump than that character would allow? Or why do you think that wouldn't have worked as well with him as president?
I think there was a certain amount of honesty that was needed at that time. And I think our appetite for satire that was that arch and over the top was less savory. And I think it still in some ways is, it's probably becoming more so as time goes on. But the scarier things get, the less funny they can become, And so when you're embodying that perspective, even though it's obvious that it's satire, the appetite for it isn't as great, as things become more frightening. But where we did find a place to utilize it, and I was so happy when I got to start doing this, was through Foxplains.
Yeah.
And it felt like, okay, I don't have to play this character all the time. I can be myself as host. I can be the role of a correspondent and set up a premise, but then I can go 200% and go Foxplains. But it's this shorter, more intense, more contained device that feels a little, for me anyway, it feels like, okay, that's fun for the amount of time that we're sitting with this.
Yeah, I wanted to ask about Foxsplains and how it began. And the side question of that is it true that you stole it from Michael Costa?
It is true. It is true. But I did not intentionally steal it from Michael Costa. Michael Costa got sick one day and they needed someone to fill in. And so I was the one who was available. So if he wasn't such a weak little bitch, then he would be doing Fox Plains right now. And you can tell him I said that.
Yeah, and he would have 2 Emmy nominations. Maybe,
Hey,
maybe not.
he
You never
would.
know.
He would. He would.
Um, so yeah, it's funny that it's like that's the place for you to play this right wing type character, but it's also presented as you, as if this is like the real you that we're not seeing on the show. So I feel like there's something funny there. Um, how would you describe sort of what it is you're doing with these pieces? Because they're very different tone, very different pace, very different everything than what you're doing when you're hosting the show.
Totally. Yeah. It's you described it perfectly. I've always looked at it as this is me if I watched an inhumane amount of Fox News, like 300 hours in a row, and I've just ingested all this information because that is what Fox News does. And they're not the only ones. I think it's gone beyond Fox News. It's Newsmax, it's Tucker's podcast, it's Megyn Kelly's podcast, it's internet culture, it's the
Mm-hmm.
need to form a take to control the narrative before you have all the information, or ignoring the facts, but you have to get your take out there before someone else does. So there's a certain amount of paranoia. Everything is driven by fear. It's, amped up. There's a ton of adrenaline. There's an energy that I think we try to capture for sure. It used to be that every Fox Plains piece would be a particular narrative built on a paper thin premise of a conspiracy theory that they just run 9 days of wall-to-wall coverage on and go all in on. This is what's happening, this is what's going to kill you, this is what you should be afraid of. And we would just try to capture the mental gymnastics and all of that and try to heighten. Now, since Trump 2.0, it has become they instead take a story that is true, that has happened, and they tell you all the reasons why it's not true or why you shouldn't look at it. So it's the mental gymnastics of why you should look over here and not over there. So like the Epstein files is the
Yeah,
latest
that's kind of
example.
the perfect example, right? Is that one that you did on Epstein recently, where yeah, it's about the distraction. It's about the mind of somebody who once thought that this was the most important story in the world and is now telling you to look away and it's time to move on. Yeah, in terms of mental gymnastics, that might have been the most challenging one you've done to date.
Yeah, it definitely was. But it was fun because it was the one where I got to kind of break a little bit, in the sense that even as I am telling people to not pay attention to it, I'm not believing it. Like, I was allowed to kind of struggle with that. Like, wait a second, but I just cared about this 3 months ago. Why do I not care about this now? Like, so that was a really fun level to play in all of it. But the writing team works so hard on those, and they happen so quickly. It's just like, I feel so lucky to get to work with this team, because the show works at such a quick pace anyway. But for those in particular, it's like we take this idea that's happening right now and we'll turn it around within 24 hours sometimes, because it just has to be written within an hour, and then we're shooting it in 30 minutes, and then it's quickly edited and put out that night or first thing the next day. So it's really like it. I love doing those. I feel like it's our team at their very best.
Yeah, and there's something heightened about it, obviously, and ridiculous about it that you've watched these hours and hours of Fox and that you've become convinced of this stuff. But it's also like a real phenomenon that's happening to people where they are watching Fox all day long and are really believing these things.
Yeah.
So have you even ever, because you have to watch this stuff for work and you're engaging with it, do you ever feel yourself like maybe they're right, or maybe there is something there, or questioning your own beliefs or anything like that. Because it's so manipulative that it feels like if you do watch enough of it, it does start to make you think differently.
Absolutely. You watch, 45 minutes of it and you go, "Oh, I see why people feel this way.
Yeah.
I understand why they believe this because you have someone telling you this is what is true. Don't believe your eyeballs. This other thing is what's actually happening." And there's so much fear driving all of it, and fear is such a powerful motivator. So I totally understand that. I mean, we're all inundated with whatever our algorithms are feeding us, and we're all struggling with that. It doesn't matter what side we're on politically. Yeah, I have Fox News on sometimes in my office, and I'll look up really quickly and I'll see a headline and go, "Oh my god, that's oh my god, that's really happening." And then I'll realize, "Oh, I'm watching Fox News. Oh, okay, hold on, that's probably not exactly what's happening." Yeah, it's all become for entertainment's sake, for controlling the narrative. Facts have just gone out the window. And I think, I grew up in Kentucky. I have a lot of Republican family members. We have conversations. And a lot of times, what it comes down to is if you believe two different realities and you're getting your information from completely different places, it's really hard to get on the same page with anything because you're not living in the same world.
Yeah. What is that like for you to have family members who are maybe, I don't know if they're Trump voters or they're people on that side of things, um, knowing what you do for a living, and sort of how do they view your role as part of the other side and part of the Daily Show?
I don't know. I haven't talked to them in years, Matt. That's the no, 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 no. No, it's fortunately I come from a very loving family who, my parents have been lifelong Republicans. They're not necessarily Trumpers by any means, but they have been Republicans their whole lives, and they watch every episode of The Daily Show. They
Mm.
always do. And it really is like, it's whether they agree with me or not, they are that supportive to do that. And so I very much appreciate it. But I think it rubs a lot of my family members the wrong way. I'm sure it does. And sometimes we talk about it and sometimes we intentionally avoid it. But I do think the more you can sit down with people you're close to, people who you have a different perspective from, and just talk some of those things out, you know, you may reach an impasse, but you can generally find something, some kind of commonality. You generally want the same things at the end of the day. You just believe in different ways of getting there. So, my fear is that eventually we all just completely stop talking to one another and we're just living in our own silos.
Do you ever hear from anybody at Fox about Foxplains? Have you ever heard like that people there know about it or have seen it, or anything like that?
The only person that I've talked to is Jessica Tarlov, who I adore and think
Yeah,
she is so brilliant.
she's the token liberal on the five most days for people who don't know.
Yeah, so she's the only one who will talk to me.
She's a
But
fan.
she is fighting the good fight, man. She's
Yeah,
become a
that's
friend, and
tough.
yeah, she really does a phenomenal job on there. Yeah, we talk about it a little bit, but no, I'm still waiting for everyone else to reach out to me. Jesse Waters, and listen, open invitation. Happy to have a conversation.
So you mentioned you're coming up on your 10-year anniversary at the show, which is amazing and probably is hard to believe considering how this pace of things
How
and
impossibly
what
young I look. I know,
yeah,
Matt. I know.
and what
No.
these past 10 years have been like, because it has been the 10 years really. Basically you got there when Trump announced his candidacy, and we're still doing this.
Yeah. It feels crazy. It feels like I started yesterday and also like 100 years have passed. It's so wild. But we've been through so many moments in history. We've been through so many epic changes, pandemics and strikes and different hosts and then hosting rotations. And now we're at this point where like, oh gosh, politically speaking, in terms of preserving democracy, it feels more fraught, more frightening than ever. But I will say creatively in our own little bubble at the show, we're having such a wonderful time working with each other to get to do this with my buddies who I've worked with for so long. I started with Ronnie 10 years ago, and Jordan was there when I got there, and Michael started shortly after. Creatively, it's really exciting to get to try new things and stretch and grow and learn, and to be able to lean on your buddies all the way through. I mean, we're constantly checking in with each other and asking each other for advice. And what do you do when this happens? And how do you manage when the guest comes in and wants to talk about this, but you want to take it in this direction? You know, we get advice from one another all the time. And then to be able to have Jon come in on Mondays and show us how it's done and always make himself available to us to be supportive and answer questions. It's really, I mean, I couldn't imagine a better setup for us creatively. It's been really fun.
Yeah, it does feel like the show is in such a great place right now. There was so much sort of strange turmoil and changes over the last couple of years after Trevor left. And they were sort of searching for a permanent host, I guess, but then, did all the celebrity, rotation, and then, sort of trying you guys out. What was that like for you? Did you feel like you were in contention to be the permanent host of the show, or was that not even on your mind at that time?
It was. I don't know. I don't know exactly where they were at that time. I think there were just so many unknowns. I think there's without a doubt the show and the network was in a place where they went, oh, what do we do now? It was all unexpected, and I never thought that hosting would ever be something that I would want to do, could do, have an opportunity to do. But the second that it became available and they were figuring things out, I kind of felt like I had to throw my hand up in the air and say, put me in, coach, without thinking about it too hard, because you never know when you're going to get an opportunity like that. And I didn't know if they would consider me or not. So I kind of threw my hat in the ring before I could think about whether I could actually do it. And then I did get the opportunity to do it, and I started to panic.
Yeah.
I started to, slowly unravel Foxsplains style, and go, oh my God, like, can I even do this? It looks so hard. And how am I even going to tackle this? How many times can I rehearse? And I was complaining to my husband often about, not complaining, but definitely like unleashing my anxiety about all of it. And we were sitting down eating dinner, and we got takeout one night, and I opened up my fortune cookie, and it just said, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And my husband was just like, well, there's the advice that I couldn't give you.
Yeah.
And he took the fortune and he got it framed, and now it sits in my office. So every time before I go out to host a show, I look at that and I go, yeah, it's kind of fun to do the impossible. And then I just remind myself to enjoy the ride. But it was a strange time. It was a little scary because we just didn't know what was going to happen, if we were going to stay on the air, what the future was. But some great things came out of it in terms of getting to meet some comedic heroes of mine. I got to spend time with Sarah Silverman and Chelsea Handler, and Marlon Wayans came through, and John Leguizamo, and these people who I admired and watched their work for so long. So that was a cool outcome of all of it.
And then when they decided to bring Jon back on Mondays, were you surprised by that? Were you, because you had been working with Trevor for so long. I don't think you ever thought that you would be working with Jon Stewart on the show.
Right.
What was that like to sort of realize that you were going to get that opportunity? Because he's obviously such a legend of the show and someone who
Yes.
everybody, grew up watching and looking up to.
Absolutely. He's the whole reason I desperately wanted to be part of the show. So, yeah, it was a huge surprise. I had no idea. None of us did, except for I think maybe one person or two people at the top who were making the decision. And, but it was the just the greatest news. I have admired him for so long and never got the opportunity to work with him, but but it's funny because he built the show to be a certain way, in the way, not just the way that things are run like a machine to get the show out on time, but his perspective stuck around the way that morale is at the studio, the way we work with one another. I'm sure some of the guys have talked about this, but we're a workplace where anyone can pitch an idea and it could end up on the show. Interns can
Hmm.
pitch ideas, PAs can pitch ideas, security could pitch an idea and it could end up on the show. So, that's something that he instilled. And it's just that kind of open collaboration that stuck around all through the years. So it was like I got to, benefit from him, even though I didn't get to work with him until he came back. But then having him come back and to watch him do his thing, to get to watch him behind the scenes work through his process and come in with a distinct point of view, but have flexibility for collaboration and to create a feeling in the room that allows for everyone to feel safe enough to throw out their ideas. Like, just watching him lead has been such an education and a real gift.
So I think he was hosting or a big part of the show, the live show on election night this past year. But then
Yeah.
you were the host the day after the election, after it had been called, which I'm sure was scheduled for a long time. I would
Yes.
imagine that you were hoping to be, reporting on the election of the first female president,
Uh-huh.
um, and you were not. But I do think that it was so impactful for you to be in that chair that night, because there are so few, basically no women hosting late night shows. And so you had, you were there, and you gave that great monologue about America electing its first felon before its first female president. So can you talk about, how you felt going into that night and what you wanted to say, and just what that felt like?
Yeah. I very much wanted to be there, however it shook out. So I was glad to take that spot. But I will be honest, I was not anticipating things to shake out the way they did. It was a tough day to come into work, for sure, for a lot of us. And also we shot the live show the night before, so we were all coming in with, maybe 4 hours of sleep. Some of us hungover, a lot of us distraught, some gloating. There were just a lot of feelings going
Wait,
in.
gloating? Who was gloating at the show?
I
I don't
mean,
think I get
we
that.
got a few. We're not all one mindset there. We got some diversity in thought.
Okay, okay.
We got some. So it was an interesting time, but coming in that day, I think watching the coverage, the news coverage the night before into that morning, everyone was so quick to play the blame game and say Kamala's campaign didn't do this, they didn't do that, voters wanted this and they messed up, and here are all the ways they went wrong, and they were all conflicting with one another. Everyone, none of it made any sense, but everyone kind of, the Foxsplains things, it was just having to put out a hot take before you have time to really digest and think it through. And I just felt like, let's not do that. Let's just walk in and be honest, and let's sit in this moment as it feels right now and deal with the reality that we're dealing with. And it's also not that, Trump is the boogeyman anymore, because unfortunately, he's holding up a mirror for the rest of America to take a good hard look. Like, we have to face that. And there are many things at play. So tomorrow and the next day, we'll figure out what the Democratic Party did to fail on this. But right now, let's just sit in this moment and be honest about how it feels and what's going on. And we just had that conversation. We just had a very open, honest conversation And the team was so amazing at rolling up their sleeves and giving 200% that day, even though they were running on fumes. And it really, I was really proud of that show just because it was a great example of how hard our team works and how everyone just gives it their all always under any circumstances.
Does it feel different now doing the show with Trump as president than it did the first time?
Yeah, very. I mean, there are some things that feel familiar, like the news cycle moving so quickly. The first time he was in office, I do remember shows being written and then having to do last minute rewrites because he would do something insane and we just couldn't ignore it. We had to tackle it on the show. And that is happening, tenfold now.
Mm.
It's happening often where we will go into rehearsal with a full script and then do a top to bottom rewrite right after rehearsal because something has happened that we can't ignore that becomes the story of the day. So there's that feels different. It Listen, we're never at a loss for material. I can tell you that much. Something is always happening worth talking about. But it can be really hard because the scarier things get, like we were talking about earlier, the scarier things get, the more fear we have. It's harder to find the humor sometimes, but the team always ends up figuring it out one way or another.
Yeah, and late night TV has become part of the story too, with Colbert getting canceled.
Yeah.
John obviously had a very impassioned response to that, but I remember hearing rumors that week that he could get fired as well. That because Daily Show's under Paramount, that the show could get canceled, or that he might quit in protest or something. Obviously, that didn't happen, but still, it's unclear what's going to happen. So, how are you feeling about the future of late night in general, the Daily Show, given all of these concerns and the new regime coming in at Paramount too?
Yeah, it that was a shock. I mean, that the Colbert News was a real shock. And as a fan, like as someone who watched him and loved his work, and he like John, he was a huge part of why I wanted to be part of the show. So it was shocking and disheartening for all of us. And we don't know, we don't know what the future holds. I can't pretend to guess. Without a doubt, late night is shifting. The way people are consuming late night content is shifting. That's been happening for a long time. I think, the show has done a really great job at staying on top of engaging with our viewers in different ways. Uh, our expansion team, our digital team is trying to figure out new ways to engage with people, and so that we're not falling behind. And but I still think that in terms of the Daily Show being in the cultural conversation, I like to think that we're still very much part of that. And I want to think that, we have a future one way or another, however things shake out. But, we've been really lucky in that we've been able to have a platform to try to find catharsis and find humor and say what we believe and not be censored in any way. And I really hope we get to continue doing that.
Yeah, it's been fascinating to watch what's happening with South Park, which is also under Paramount, and doing things that are so beyond what you guys do, what Colbert has been doing, and it seems like they are getting away with it in a way that maybe not everyone else can. So I don't know if you've been keeping up with that, but it's been really fascinating to watch.
Scorched earth, baby,
Yeah,
scorched earth. And that's part, like I'm very excited to see what Colbert does in the next several months as well. I mean, he has a whole new season, and watching Colbert is incredible, but watching Scorched Earth Colbert is even more exciting. So I will say I'm very excited to see
yeah.
what
I
he
feel
does.
like he went more scorched earth in the Colbert Report days, and I would love to see a little bit of that come back in these last several months that he has apparently on the air. I can't believe that they would cancel his show and then say, but you can stick around for another 9 months or whatever it is.
Yeah,
But
I
should be
sure as hell
interesting.
will be watching. Yeah, and South Park too. Oh my God. Oh my God. Yep.
So now it's time for our segment called the first laugh. So this is kind of like our speed round. So I'm going to ask you a series of questions, starting with the first piece of comedy that you remember making you laugh really hard as a kid growing up.
The movie Airplane,
Mm.
which hasn't aged all that well. There are parts of that movie that
Yeah,
could not,
it's from another time.
definitely from another time. There was actually, you know what? I'm gonna be even more specific. Airplane 2. So
Mm.
my aunt Jan loves comedies, loves humor. She has a great sense of humor. She had recorded Airplane and Airplane 2, along with a million other comedies. And when we would have family gatherings, the kids would go down in the basement and play, and we would always pop in one of those movies. And I remember watching Airplane 2, and there was this sight gag of this little this little girl in the airport running towards her grandma, and she goes, "Grandmammy," and she runs towards this older woman, knocks the older woman down, and runs to the person behind her. And it was so stupid, but so, like, I remember laughing on the verge of peeing my pants, and I must have rewound that 1,000 times. So, like, those big dumb physical gags that still gets me to this day.
Yeah, well, that brand of humor is back with the new Naked Gun.
Naked Gun. How exciting is that?
What about the first time that you knew that you were funny, that you could make other people laugh?
I had a rehearsal or a recital, a dance recital when I was 5 or 6, maybe. And it was to this song called When I Grow Up. And we danced this performance. We had a choreographed routine for this song. And then at the very end, we all walked up to a microphone and said what we wanted to be when we grew up. And
Mm.
every single one of the girls, there were 14 girls or something in the class, and every single one of them came up and said, "I want to be a ballerina. I want to be a dancer. I want to be a ballerina." And for some reason, I walked up and said, "I want to be a dentist." And it got a huge laugh. Just because I was the only weirdo who
Yeah.
didn't understand the game. And I thought, oh, that was interesting. Oh, maybe I could try to do that on purpose.
You mentioned that you started out, in scripted stuff before getting into, late night and Daily Show. Um, do you have a memory from one of those early parts that you did? Whether I know Two and a Half Men was on there
Oh
as
God,
an
yeah.
early guest role. What was
Yes.
just something that you remember either from that or some other, early scripted role that you did?
My very first job, I didn't actually have a line, but my very first actual job was to be a featured extra in the movie Not Another Teen Movie,
Mm.
which was this parody that Chris Evans
Yeah,
starred in.
in the airplane style.
Yes, yes. Go figure. And I was cutie number 2, and I threw my bra at Chris Evans. And I'm wondering if he might have it, because I would like it back. So if you talk to him, maybe you could ask
Okay,
him if
I'll
he
find out
still
for
has
you.
my bra. That was my first gig, my first ever gig.
We mentioned your Daily Show audition, but what do you remember about the very first piece that you got on air, whether it was a desk piece or a field piece or something that stands out from
Oh gosh.
that first bit that you got to do?
My first field piece that I did was in Lincoln, Nebraska, and it was on the death penalty. So real light comedic stuff. And it was the last possible week that I could travel safely because I was pregnant. So I was maybe 8 months pregnant at the time, flew to Lincoln, Nebraska, and we were reenacting this silly idea of, like, the death penalty being a deterrent. And I was trying to embody that, ironically. And the field producer gave me a ski mask and a crowbar and told me to run into a Walgreens.
Sounds
to pretend
dangerous.
like I was a criminal. And so here I am, 8 months pregnant,
Oh,
all belly with the ski mask and a crowbar, and I run into a Walgreens. And now in retrospect, I look back, I go, did we even have security? It was dark out. Like what
yeah.
what would have happened? So but I did it, and no one really batted an eye. So I guess
Guess you
when
weren't
you're
that
pregnant,
intimidating.
yeah, I should have really taken advantage of that and tried to pull off a jewelry heist or something. Total missed opportunity. But that was my first taste of what it's like to work on the Daily Show, and I was kind of hooked. Thrilling.
Since we're, talking during Emmys time, do you have a memory from the first time you went to the Emmys, and just what it was like to be there?
Oh man. It's so, gosh, I want to pretend like I don't care and it's what, oh, Hollywood stuff. It's so fun. It really is such a magical experience. I mean, I just, you grow up watching those award shows and you never think you're going to get an opportunity to go and experience it, but it really is such a cool treat. I'm still pinching myself. I'm like on the verge of making myself bleed because I just can't believe it's actually happening. Yeah, just to go, and I remember last year sitting behind the entire, or no, maybe it was 2 years ago, sitting behind the cast of Succession and just being
Mm.
like, oh my God, those actors, maybe some of their creative brilliance will leak onto us if we could just breathe the same air. It's yeah, it's wild. It's one of the coolest experiences for sure.
Do you have a story or memory about the first time you got to meet one of your really big comedy heroes, and just what it was like to meet them for the first time?
Oh, let's see. Okay. Well, I'll tell a recent, let's see, do I have one from way back? Recently, this isn't reaching back into any old stories, but on the last week that I hosted, I got to interview Tony Hale, and I'm such a Tony Hale fan.
Yeah,
He
he's
is
great.
so brilliant, has been brilliant in everything he's ever been in. And I'm just so fascinated by what his process is and the way that his mind works. And he tells this story of starting on Arrested Development. And he said it in this self deprecating way, but it was such a smart question to ask. He said when he first started playing Buster, he talked to Mitch Hurwitz, the creator of the show, and said, what does Buster want? And Mitch said, to be safe. He just wants to be safe. And from that point on, everything from like his physicality, the way he brought his neck back and brought his arms
Mm.
back, and the way he would talk, and always so jittery, afraid of everything. It gave him what he needed to embody that role. And I thought that was so brilliant and so specific. And of course, a perfect question to ask as an actor.
Finally, do you have a story or memory from your career that makes you laugh now, but really was not funny when it happened?
Oh, that's such a great question. Um, I would do, I would just go full tilt on every audition that I got. Anything that I wanted, I just was gonna go for it. And I cringe now thinking about the crazy things that I've done in auditions. And I would go so hard that when I wouldn't get the role, it would be extra devastating. But you just can't have any sort of embarrassment. You just have to keep going. I remember auditioning for this movie, and it was very physical, and the character was supposed to be pregnant and and uh like also doing a lap dance or something, like, and I remember going into the audition going, well, I have to look pregnant. I'm not pregnant, but I have to, that's part of the whole thing. So I went in wearing like a couch cushion under a dress that would make Kelly Bundy blush, and doing this whole like dance routine. Mind you, I am not a good dancer. I threw myself all over that audition room and then left and went like, oof. like pulled the cushion out, nailed that one. I'm sure they'll be calling any minute. Never got a call. Did not get that role, which just adds insult to injury. But listen, that's what it's like being an actor.
At least you leave knowing that you left it all on the table and
left it all on the table,
no
including
regrets.
My couch cushion.
Well, Desi, thank you so much for doing this. I'm so glad we finally got to talk on this podcast, and I'm such a big fan of your work on The Daily Show, and hope that it continues for a long time.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. It was so fun to chat with you.